Okay, here we go. Jay Eagle, tell us about your childhood.
My childhood, my dad was a farmer and hauled produce to the farmer's market and sold produce, and I'd always wanted a pony, and I remember the day that I got up one morning, my dad had bought me a pony, and I couldn't go to sleep all night. I was so excited to have that pony, which was just a small horse. And so then he made sure the rest of my life growing up that I had one kind of horse or another. And then I sunk my fool with a lot as a kid. When I was 18 years old, I was riding a horse with a Western pistol on my side with a holster. And when I got off the horse, it fell out of my holster and shot me in the leg. And I woke up in the hospital. I had on cowboy boots, and I remember pouring the blood out of my boot, but I got over that. I carried the bullet for a year before they took it out. But other than that, you know, I had a little brother and I had a young sister, and was real close to my brother. I'm 12 years older than him, and had a good mom and dad, so, you know, I don't know what else to say. I do remember jumping off the cabinet when I was young and circumcising myself by the cabinet door, but other than that, I don't remember a lot. Was a hellion, I know that. I remember that much.
Okay, Jay, our next question is about fandom. So in your childhood, what was your inspiration? Who guided you to see professional wrestling for the first time? Who caught your eye either on TV?
Wahoo McDaniel, and it wasn't in my early childhood. It was probably late high school, and I'd been to wrestling a couple times in Spartanburg and seen Wahoo wrestle, but the day that my daddy come home from my hunting club and introduced me to Wahoo, I didn't know who he was, seeing him in person, you know, not at wrestling, and then we become good friends. My dad passed away, and I always stayed close to Wahoo, and he's still my hero to this day.
So, tell us fans, how did you get your start in professional wrestling in this business?
Well, I was on the way to Spartanburg, the town of Spartanburg. There was an old gym called the Whitney Gym, and the school's been tore down, and all that was left was the gym. And I stopped and walked in and met their guys. They was an independent group called Outlaws back in them days, and I met One Man Gang, Rattlesnake Westbrook, the Bandits, the Butcher. Met a bunch of guys in the independents, and I actually got in there and worked out with them a time or two, and the promoter, who was Joe Gilbert, wrestled as a little cowboy. He wanted me to go ahead and start, and I said, hey, I just come to join the school. He said, well, you done good enough. But when I was growing up, my grandpa owned the old house, and he built him a new house, and his old house had a lot of beds in it. And so me and my cousins pulled all the mattresses off and took this one room, and we made it a room full of mattresses. And we would do backdrops and hip tosses, and that was before I even got into wrestling. And I knew when I went to the school, when I seen the guys taking the bumps, I said, well, that's what I've been doing all the time, me and my cousin. And we, like I say, we'd watch wrestling, give each other backdrops and stuff like that. But that's about my first memories of really starting to get into it.
So we will segue into
what was your first gimmick? Like, what, you weren't Chief J Eagle right away, were you?
No, I was going to be Jerry Eagle, and I had a little mustache. I didn't want to shave my mustache. And I already had family saying, you need to be an Indian because it's in our blood, and they showed me pictures of my great-grandparents and different people, and so I just wore a red flashy jacket that had eagle on it, and started out with that. It was just what you call it back in them days. Anyway, the whole jacket glittered. And so after about one or two matches, I started the Indian gimmick in. And I went to the Paphos, and when I wrestled for Randy Savage, he changed me from Jerry Eagle to J Eagle. And so I got a little publicity in the magazine, so when I come back home, I stuck with J Eagle from the day forward.
Okay, so speaking of outlaws, this is an organization that switched from the outlaw scene or reputation to being a little bit more legit. And that started in Rock Hill, South Carolina, 1977, with the partnership of Buddy and Mike Shane. Mike Shane used to run shows down in Charlotte, if my history research is kind to me, and Buddy Shane ran out of Rock Hill.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that partnership? How did you start?
Oh, they was both good guys. They wrestled as the Shane brothers, and Buddy was tough as nails. I loved wrestling because I would chop him hard. He'd say, "You hit like a girl." So I'd hit him so hard that I would hurt my hand, but that's what he wanted. I mean, he wanted everything to sound off, and he was a killer heel. He could get any crowd going. But now Mike had a whole different personality. He was soft-spoken, friendly to everybody. Even as a heel, he would try to get over with their cheating and not with his mouth. But they's great guys. I miss both of them, and I think Mike's still living, but I'm not sure. But I had a friend in Spartanburg that stayed in touch with him, but now that friend has passed away, so I really don't know what Mike's up to these days. But Buddy passed away years ago.
Okay, what can you tell me about Chief Black Eagle? Dealings with him?
Okay, Black Eagle was, the guys had told me 2 or 3 times they was bringing my dad in. Well, I didn't know what they were talking about. So I showed up at a TV tape in Lake City, South Carolina, and he was there. He was a Puerto Rican. He spoke pretty fluent English, but he didn't come across as a Native American to me, but he was a showman. He did a lot of dancing. He'd do the war dance around the ring, and I always talked with that accent. But he was a great guy. I enjoyed my experiences with him, and from what I understand, he was pretty big up around Detroit, so they brought him down here. But yeah, I liked old Black Eagle.
Before I move on to some other bigger names, let's circle back to NAWA. As you know, NAWA is 45 years old.
Yeah.
Had 4 owners. What can you tell me about NAWA TV?
Tell you about NAWA what?
NAWA television. TV.
Oh, now or years ago?
When you first got
Yeah, when you
involved.
first got involved.
Oh, well, it was, I would never see the shows. I went to different towns where they was taping, but I remember coming back from a trip to Kentucky, and we drove all the way back to South Carolina and had to go straight to Charlotte, North Carolina for a NAWA show. And they had a lot of the guys I knew there, and because I had just returned from, well, it wasn't Kentucky at that time, it was from Oklahoma. I had returned from Oklahoma, so I remember the TV announcer announcing me from Oklahoma, and that's the only time, 9 out of 10 times I've been in Cherokee, North Carolina. But oh, it was great. I mean, it was some of the first TV I done. It was a independent guy that was shooting the shows, and actually, if you know a guy named Mark Ash, it was his dad that did the taping. Mark lives up in Wilmington and got his own podcast and 2 or 3 things.
Okay, I'm going to throw this in just for the heck of it, for a tidbit. So with NAWA, basically in the old days it was like the outlaw. After the demise of the Crockett's, and they sold to WCW.
Yeah.
Did you see a big boom in business? The Jimmy Valiants, the Ivan Koloffs, big names at
Yeah, but
WCW.
I didn't just work for NAWA. I've always had a lot of people I worked for through the years. I might not work for the same promoter but every couple of months, but I was still working every week, plus working through the week if I could, and went to, I mean, even with no guarantee in them days, I'd go to a show because everybody, the young guys, all want to be part of the show, and so I met a lot of those wrestlers out traveling, and I would introduce them to Mike and Buddy Shane, and they would start booking them. And that was guys like the Super Rocker and Johnny B. Good and Black Jack Dalton and Scotty Piper. I mean, I met all them guys through Buddy Porter. And I remember one of the best matches I thought I ever seen was in Chester. Buddy Porter run a show, and he had Scotty Piper and Blackjack Dalton against Kenny V and some other guy. But I mean, they built the heat, they did the hot tag at the right time, and they impressed me. So that turned out to be guys that I run with later on in my years.
Okay, just for the heck of it, out of the 4 owners, do you have a preference? Do you have a favorite? Or they all have their strengths and weaknesses? What can you tell me about the 4 owners of the NAWA? Starting with, you already told us about the Shane brothers. How about like Chad? How about like Jason? How about like Mark? What can you
Chad who?
Chad Bird.
Bird?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know he was a part owner. I always dealt with Mike and Buddy, which, you know, Buddy was a loud talker and took over, took control, took charge. But he always had a lot of faith in me, and them boys would make me look good on TV. I was just a kid then, but even the TV commentators, when I would wrestle, they would talk about, oh, this Jay Eagle's going to be a force one day and all this, just giving me the big head. But who was the other partner besides Chad?
Hey, didn't Buddy like to call you a Mexican roofer on TV?
No,
Who was that? Jason
Scotty
said
Piper.
Buddy.
Scotty
Jason
Piper.
said Buddy Shane?
Yeah, he called me a tanning bed Indian too.
Jason told me it was Buddy Shane.
He might have did that. He might have did. I don't remember.
That's right. I just thought that was...
Nothing that stuck out in my head.
Okay, so before Jason was Mark Henderson, is that correct? Mark Henderson, does that ring a bell?
I know Mark. He was the referee for Buddy all them years.
Okay, but he ended up being I think he was the second owner of the NAWA.
I knew he was tied in with him, but I never knew he was the owner, which I always liked Mark. He's a great referee, but, you know, I never knew he was a part of the ownership. What they come across us as it being Buddy and Shane, because they would make the matches out, and, you know, and...
Gotcha. Okay. So, can you emphasize a little bit more, tell us a little bit more details of Super Rocker.
Super Rocker was Johnny Savage. When I met him, his real name's Don Herbert. We did the cowboy Indian gimmick. He was the cowboy and I was the Indian, and we did that for years. And then he tried a couple of gimmicks, but when he done the Super Rocker, it was like a Jimmy Valiant with a painted face, and people loved Super Rocker, and he come out to the music back in the early days, and everybody didn't, and I still love him. He's a pastor, gospel singer now, lives in Kannapolis or Concord or somewhere in that area there, but he had a group of guys that would come with him too. It was Gary Royal, Bob Brandon, Ken Boone, Arnold Becker, which was just a gimmick name, Becker. But them guys, they was 5 of them run together. They was all workers, but they wasn't working nowhere. So they got tied up with me. I started using all of them. And eventually, when Johnny Hunter started running more than I was, I kind of just faded out and worked for him. And you know, it's hard to talking about working for Buddy and working for Johnny Hunter and some different promoters. They all come through the years, but it's hard to remember what decade or what years that I worked for each one, because I always, you know, some of them would run a heavy for a while and then they'd slack off and somebody else, but I've always been blessed with somewhere to work.
Now, before I go on to some bigger names, let's circle back again to one of my kind of co-workers, Johnny B. Good. Okay, so the Killer. That's
Yeah.
known, okay, so he got to start with Buddy Shane in Rock Hill.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the late 80s, he had a program with you. Is that correct?
We had 2 or 3 through the years. When he worked for me, he would wear a hood and he would be a heel. And when I worked for them, I'd work Baby and Johnny'd work Baby. So we'd either team up, but then again, we went through the later years working for different promoters together because we always had a little clique, and you know, no matter if who was heel and who was Baby, we could make it work. He still says he worked me at Indian Bingo years ago, and I knocked him out with a chair, but I don't remember that. But
Okay, so here's some big names from the past. I'll go one at a time, and tell me if this is at NAWA, if you can recall the promotion. But Brute Bernard.
Brute Bernard, he's the first famous wrestler I ever met. Well, I was working as top babyface for Charlie Babb, and they brought Brute in to feud with me. Well, I wrestled him my first time in Fletcher, North Carolina. He put knots all over my head, just beat the snot out of me, and I knew I had to wrestle him the next night, so I was kind of dreading it. But I guess I won his respect, because the next night that I wrestled him, he put me over like a superstar. He sold for me, he looked good. I guess he was initiating me or filling me out, but after that, we got to be real good friends, and he would call me, get me on shows like, "I will work for so-and-so, you want to come work me?" Yeah, well, we become good friends, and I'd call him and he'd call me, and I called him one day, and his wife said, "Jay, I'm sorry, but Brute done something stupid." I said, "What'd he do?" She said, "He was playing with a gun and he shot himself." I said, "Oh, Betty." See, his wife was a worker too, Betty Bernard, and it just ripped my heart out, because then again, he was somebody that thought a lot of me, and I didn't know why. But then he wanted me to come to his house, because he had Appaloosa horses, and you know, a lot of the Indians ride the Appaloosa, so he wanted pictures. There was a photographer for a wrestling magazine by the name of Gene Gordon, that every time I would go to Brute would have him there with his camera taking pictures. And at that time, I was married to a lady wrestler for 10 years, and he took a lot of pictures of the girls too.
So here's a very big name from the tag team past in the Carolinas. I saw this guy one time in the early 80s myself. It's the famous Scranton, CUSC, Scranton, Pennsylvania. What can you tell me about Swede Hansen?
Swede Hansen. Then again, he's somebody I watched as a kid growing up, and I never thought I'd get to know him. But when me and Wahoo got close and we hung out together, that's where we would go. And we'd go, Swede had a couple of bars around Charlotte and Rock Hill, and me and Wahoo would go to his clubs or bars and just hang out with him. Told a lot. I mean, you know, I remember driving a car, and Brute and no, I'm sorry, it was Wahoo and Swede was in the back seat, and I would drive for them, and I'd just hang on every word. I'd listen to everything they had to say, because just hearing two old veterans like Wahoo and Swede talk was interesting to me.
Did you also sit under the learning tree of Rip Hawk?
No, I never met Rip. He left Mid-Atlantic before I got involved. I never did TV for Mid-Atlantic, but I did some house shows. I worked with the Mod Squad and a couple other guys. It was right before they shut down.
That's after he was tag partners with an early Ric Flair, he split. Okay. Here's another big name from the past, George Gray. One-man gang. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, when I went to that little school gym in my early years, this was like 1975 or 76, George Gray was in there as a trainee, and he weighed 500 pounds, and he was about 6'5" or 6'6", and he could do a drop kick, he could take flips and everything. And when I went up to work the Muncho Man, I said, "Randy, I got a friend at home," and I told him how big he was. I said, "He can do a drop kick." Randy said, "Oh yeah, could you bring him up?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure I can." So when I went back up to Kentucky in 2 weeks, I carried George, and he never came home. He went from there to Bill Watts and what was it, U something W or something, but he lives in Shreveport now, and he's married to a lady named Mary, and they got a son named Justin, and I got one named Dustin, and they the same age. So, and as many years ago as that was probably 35 years ago, he left an 8-track tape in my van of the Commodores. And I still got the tape laying in my garage at home. I've kept it. I told him I had it, and he said, "Oh, I don't believe it." I said, "Yeah, you left it in my van, and I saved it for you all these years."
Here's a big name, locally at least in North Carolina. The guy from Lexington, North Carolina, Rick Link. What can you tell me about?
Rick Link, he's a tough old scoundrel. I've a lot of matches with Rick. I would work him in towns. I remember wrestling in the town where Ronnie Millsap, country singer, lives. I can't remember the name of the town. But anyway, we had Rick to jump me after my match. I think I worked Bobby Fulton, but after my match, he jumped me and whipped me with a belt, and we was coming back in the Indian strap match, but we never went back, so I never did get the whooping back. So what can I say?
Okay, so getting back to good old Macho Man in the Paphos, how did you get connected with ICW?
A guy named Danny Doyle was a worker that was working for him, and his real name was Alan Goldforth, and he lives in the Philippines now. He got some kind of government job and ended up over there. But me and him was a babyface tag team in the early years for a lot of promoters, Johnny Hunter and Charlie Babb, and Randy had told him he was looking for some baby faces, and they brought me in, and I teamed up with Rick McCord and a couple more baby faces. Buddy Landell was a baby face then, and I loved my time in ICW. I got to be good friends with Ernie Ladd, Pez Watley, Rick McCord, Izzy Slapowicz, Doug Vines, Jeff Sword, Bob Orton, Ronnie Garvin. I might have mentioned Pez Watley, who I loved. I'll never forget following Pez and Ernie Ladd to a show in a Volkswagen with a T-top or a sunroof. And you could see Ernie's head sticking out of the Volkswagen at least a foot and a half, and you couldn't hardly see Pez sitting down in the driver's seat. But that was an experience, following them to shows and seeing Ernie's head sticking out of the Volkswagen.
Speaking of ICW television, did you get to work their television program much?
Do what now?
Get any opportunities to work on ICW television?
Yes. I worked Pez Watley, Randy Savage, Rip Rogers, quite a few, because I went up and worked for them 3 or 4 times, but I would only stay like 2 weeks at a time. I had a wife and kids at home, so had to check in pretty often to keep the marriage straight. But that's when I found out what real traveling was. Like, we'd wrestle in Memphis one night and wrestle in Johnson City, and that's all the way across the state. And we would wrestle one night and start driving then and get there in time in the other town to wrestle and go somewhere else. And I'd never traveled like that. It was just 4 or 5 of us to one motel room, and I remember sleeping in the car trunk of a Cadillac one time, and I had the best bed in the bunch. So many guys in the room.
So how about, of course, Randy Savage, who was Randy Poffo. Mr. Poffo was there. Of course, he was not an in-ring talent at the time, but a big baby face was Macho Man's brother. Before he was a
Lanny.
genius. Yes. Did you get to wrestle him much?
No, I didn't wrestle Lanny because I was babyface and he was babyface, but we was good friends, and we traveled together in the ring truck, and don't remember a lot about Lanny. He was just, just another worker up there. They didn't treat us any different. Hurt my neck the other night. Called the guys working at Sunset, clipped me, and he took me down with him, and I hurt my neck when I hit the ring.
Okay, so this next question, I have a question on myself. We have Iron Mark Thunder, who was George South. We have a few here, so somebody...
Iron Mark Thunder before George?
Yes, that was George.
It was George?
Yeah.
Well, I don't get the question.
When we started...
Oh, okay. So, all right, never mind. All right, I get it now. I'm old. All right, so What can you tell me about any programs you worked with Iron Mark Thunder / George South?
Oh,
And that was with for Hunter, so
that was for everybody. I would get George's book for the guys that didn't know him, and after we would go in and work, they'd always bring us back. So I picked him up a lot of bookings because he didn't know the promoters like I did. It says on Wikipedia that George trained me, but that's not true. I was wrestling way before George was. I met him at a boxing gym in Gastonia, but I seen the talent he had when I met him. So he was training then, but been friends with George since we was teenagers, I guess you'd say.
So how many years difference did he have a jump on him in the business, would you say, roughly?
I probably had 10 years on him.
10 years?
Probably did. I got to think now, I'm 68, and George is 63. So well, maybe 5 or 6 years ahead of him.
George. George is he 59? I think he's 5 years older. Okay, getting back to what else can you tell me about Charlie Babb?
Charlie Babb, he was an old school promoter. Lord knows he had a lot of ideas. He recycled a lot of ideas for the different groups. He run American, what was it, Adam, AFW or something?
ACW. Wasn't it ACW?
No, it was
Charlie Babb.
American.
It was?
American Wrestling Federation, that's what he run. And he run IWA too, because I remember him doing that in the early years. But there ain't nothing to say about Charlie. He was an old con man. You knew he was lying to you, but you couldn't help but like him. And he was one to pat the wrestlers on the back and brag on them to them. But Charlie was a good guy. He just, like I say, he was an old con man, old promoter, and he's always building you up. And biggest thing I remember about working for Charlie is he guaranteed me $100 one week, and I was his some kind of champion, so I took his belt home with me when I went. So later on he said, "Bring me that belt so I can pay you." I said, "Okay."
Okay, what can you tell me about in your dealings with, like, Georgia Television?
I went down a couple times with Ivan Koloff. I worked on TV 2 or 3 times. I worked Steve-O, George Wells, worked Ivan Koloff, and Wahoo had told me, said, when you get there, don't wrestle as Jay Eagle. He said, pick you another name so you won't be listed as a jobber. So when I got there, I was Denny Wolf instead of Jay Eagle. And Gordon Soley, he actually called me Denny Brown one time during commentary, but that was before Denny Brown came into Mid-Atlantic, Georgia territory. But I loved it. I mean, I sat in the dressing room with Andre the Giant, Jimmy Snuka. I come out the bathroom one day, and Andre the Giant had a big afro then, and he had my headdress sitting on top of his hair. It wouldn't go on his head, but I come out, I didn't say nothing, I laughed, and I started to jump on him, but I let him slide. But
Okay, so locally, what kind of opportunities did you get with Mid-Atlantic Television and the Crockett?
Nothing, because I didn't work TV for them. I worked for South Atlantic, but after they took over, but I only worked the house shows from Mid-Atlantic, and like I say, I worked some of the guys like Don Cornodal and Steve-O and George Wells and what's the other guy's name? He was a private with Sergeant Slaughter. What was his name? Jim Nelson. I worked Jim Nelson.
Private Jim Nelson.
And I worked him on TV. And wasn't on TV. It was a house show because I never worked TV for Mid-Atlantic.
So, start getting around, many years in the business. So let's go into what inspired you to start your own company, SCW?
Well, for 14 years I worked for American Championship Wrestling, and they had like 4 or 5 bosses, and there was a lot of too many chiefs and not enough Indians, you might say. And then we was sponsored by Hooters, so we would always, they would pay for the bills to get the commercials on our show, and we'd all go to Hooters after we wrestled for ACW. But I come back to Spartanburg after they run for 14 years, and they closed their doors because Chaz Rocco died, and which Mitch Good died. He was the main man. He died here this past couple of years, but I mean, I loved it. I come back to Spartanburg, and I loved that name, American Championship Wrestling, so I had run dozens of shows under different names, but I changed it back to American Pro Wrestling, and I've stuck with that for about 35 years.
Just to rewind just a little bit, ACW television or ACW territory, where was that exactly?
That was the North and South Carolina coast, and all the Georgia coast also. We worked Hinesville in Georgia and Savannah, and all through South Carolina. A lot of the owners of that was former police, so they had connections. They could get into schools real easy, and they had Bambi and Chaz Rocco out selling sponsorships and doing drug speeches in the schools, and so we generally always had a packed crowd. And I love working for them. I mean, they, like I say, they run shows all the way up into Wilmington, all up along that area, but Florence, South Carolina, just, let me think here, Asheboro, Rockingham. They run Rockingham a lot, and a lot in that area, Hamlet.
Okay, so getting to local wrestler again, Chris Hamrick. Did he train with you?
Yeah, he traveled with me when he was young a lot, and the thing about Chris Hamrick, other than George South, I probably worked Chris more than anybody, and we would follow up with whatever we had to do on the show, whether it be one of us baby nutting Hill or that was switched around, because Chris, he'd take some killer bumps and make me look like I was just killing him, and I was actually pretty good back in them days before I got old, but yeah, me and Chris done about everything. Did a lot of fair shows, worked Ohio, worked, like I say, we traveled together for many years. I was a good friend with Chris's dad.
Okay, so getting back to your inspiration, getting in the business, working with Wahoo McDaniel. What can you tell me?
I loved the man. I don't know what else to say. I met him personally, and I didn't love him as a wrestler, but I respected him, and I guess my biggest thing is I wanted to be like Wahoo, you know. What can I say? There've been a few wrestlers in my life that like Brute Bernard, Randy Savage, and Wahoo that I wish was still here, and they helped me they was my mentors whether they knew it or not. Me and Randy was the same age, and that was our bond too, because found out we was the same age. So, I mean, I never worked for him full time, but he always took care of me, and when I'd work Rip Rogers and he'd complain about my chops, Randy'd whisper to me, burn him up, so, you know.
Okay, so following your idol, tell me about your history and programs of doing Indian strap matches.
Oh Lord, so many I couldn't tell you. I don't care what promoter I work for, it usually come down to an Indian strap match. And you know, I learned a lot of things from Wahoo, how to work them, how to hit the guy without killing him, how to make it look like you're killing him. And actually, Wahoo's one that taught me how to chop. He said, don't slap them with open hand, cup that hand, get the sound out of it. Because if you got a loud crowd, why burn somebody up? But if the crowd noise is down, that's when to make it pop, and everybody's like, oh, you know. So I learned a lot from Wahoo.
Okay, so once you started your own territory or your own organization or your promotion, tell me about how you started running shows in Oklahoma on the reservation.
That was working for Charlie Babb. He run an ad in the Charlotte Observer. He was looking for backers. He had a wrestling promotion, and he had lawyers to call him wanting to back him because they needed to do something with some of their money. Well, they sent us to Oklahoma, Indiana, Illinois. Now, my Kentucky stuff was West Virginia and all that was with ICW. But Charlie Babb, he carried us to Mississippi. I remember getting booked in Muskogee, Oklahoma. I'd always heard the song about we don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee, and that's the first town they sent me to. And it was enjoyable. I mean, it's, lived in motels for a while. And, funny thing about it, the young guys that think that's what they want to do, it's a different life when you do it. It's a rough life.
Okay. Takes me to this next question. You had a show on the lake, the ring floating on the water. What can you tell me about that?
That was run by Merrick Carnes out of Lancaster, South Carolina. He had welded 4 55-gallon barrels on the bottom of his ring post. I don't know how they set this thing up, but anyway, when I got there, what you would do is you'd go get in the ring, and they had a boat that would pull it out in the middle of the lake and go around the people while you was wrestling. And they had and the one way to lose your match was get thrown in the water. Everybody's trying to throw each other. But if you seen a guy come in the ring barefooted, he was probably going in the water. And I couldn't wrestle barefooted, so I always wore my boots. And they put me over, and I enjoyed it. They had a referee that couldn't swim and was terrified of water, and he wore a life jacket the whole time he refereed for us. And we'd chase him around the ring, and he'd holler. He didn't want to go in the water even with a life jacket on.
Okay, so it takes me to my next question. What can you tell me about FPWF with Candy Ryan?
Oh, Fantasy Pro Wrestling. Yeah, Candy was a good girl. I always respected her for what she done. She wanted to be in the business, and she just started up her own and knew a lot of guys up around Hickory, Lenore, Marion, up that way. And what was good for me is I had television up in Hickory, so all that little area got our TV on Channel 14. So pretty much everywhere I went, they knew me. Because you'd be surprised if people watched that Channel 14, that being just an odd channel like that. And it was great. I love working for Candy. She always paid me good. And then I got my wife and Rhonda into a little angle with her where Rhonda was a heel female and she was a babyface female running the production. And they both enjoyed that a lot, being part of the show.
Okay. So, one of the wrestlers that I know of that got his start under Candy was Austin Steele, Danny Dees.
Yeah.
And then he segued over to PWF with Stallion and George. What can you tell me about that?
We all did. Then again, Stallion and George was just two more promoters that run, and they wouldn't run every week, but it's funny back in them days because like this group was running this Saturday, another group be running the next Saturday, and if they was in the same territory, they would spread their dates out so they wouldn't be close to each other. And
it's good, give y'all plenty of work.
I always liked Danny Dees. His Austin Steele, good looking. I think he was a babyface, if I remember right. I didn't work with him a lot, but I hung out with him some. We was just on the same shows. I knew he lived up that way somewhere, and then I seen him at Jason's show here about a year ago, but I was glad to see Danny.
Yeah. Now, with your dealings with PWF, with Stallion and George, did you get any opportunities, and did you turn them down to get on, like, WWF television?
Yeah, they offered me to go up. And it's just like I say, Wahoo's advice was don't do it because it'll give you a name. And I love George South, but that's what it done to him. He is an Indian gimmick. He didn't want me to go nowhere and do a job. I mean, I didn't mind losing a match, but he didn't want me jobbing out.
So, with Channel 14 Hickory, so that was mostly just with Candy, or was
No,
having
no,
a
that was
promotion on
my that was my deal. That was
That was
American
yours,
Pro
okay.
Wrestling. I would we was taping shows every week, and I'd send them a tape up once a week.
Every Friday?
I don't know, because the show was usually a week behind, so as long as I got it to them by a certain time. And also I done that with TV station WGGS over in Greenville. I'd have to take, that's back when we had the big tapes. I'd have to carry them a tape every week to air on TV. Couldn't send them a file like you can now.
So that tape, was that considered the bicycle tapes?
Yes, yes. And we would record over them. I wish we hadn't. I wish I still had that
They
stuff.
all did,
But
pretty much.
yeah.
Okay, so APW, you started running every Friday night.
Yeah, that was in that I run every Saturday night at Lake Bowen. That was a lake on Spartanburg County. And then when I moved to Chesney, to the Chesney Coliseum, we started Friday nights, because that left me open for Saturday night to work for other people. And also I started running Hendersonville on Saturday nights at the, let me think what it was. It was, I don't know if it was YMCA or what it was, but I started running up there every Saturday night. So we'd run Friday in Spartanburg and go to Hendersonville on Saturday. So then when I quit running Chesney and moved back to Spartanburg, I went back to Saturday nights, because that was always my best draw. And I'd got a little older, and my wife didn't like me traveling as much. And my reason for finally deciding to run a show was I worked for a promoter in Hickory, North Carolina. I don't remember who it was. It was a promoter I didn't know. And something that just stuck in my craw. When I got there, they had their wrestlers with their belts on out parking cars. And I thought that made the show look bad, because, you know, Wahoo always said, put yourself on a pedestal. If you mingle with the people, they want you to get them in free. They don't look at you like that. So I drive up and see the wrestlers parking cars with their belts on. I was just embarrassed, but I wrestled, got paid, and went home, and I always said, well, I'm going to do my own.
Here's a very interesting character from the past. I don't know if he got a start with you. Reverend Slim.
Yes, he did. I gave him his name. He wrestled as Jeff Victory, and he had blonde hair and wore a robe, and I had like 4 guys doing that with blonde hair, and I said, Jeff, would you start doing a old minister gimmick, because you got the lingo for it. You can, I mean, you're so good. He said, well, I'll have to think about it, and I'll have to talk to my preacher. But we had to okay this with my wife, because if she thought we was heckling or saying anything against the Baptist religion, she didn't like it. So once we got her okay, and he got his ministers okay, he was a natural at it, man. I mean, he'd talk about the jawbone of the ass, and, you know, and if I can't get the hell out of you, I'll beat the hell out of you. And oh man, it was so good. And then he got bookings doing that other place too. He got over. Jeff was good. Then again, that's another guy I love very much.
Okay, brings me to another big name. He was associated with Chief Wahoo McDaniel because he broke his leg. Greg the Hammer Valentine. What do you
Yes.
tell me?
Oh yeah. Well, I did 3 or 4 legend shows against Greg Valentine, and I did an Indian strap match, and I went over, and then they had me against him in a dog collar match, and he went over. And the next show, he showed up with a t-shirt on it that said, I broke Wahoo's leg, and the front of it said, now I'm going to break Eagles. And then he had another shirt that said, I broke Eagle's leg, which he didn't, but he wore the shirt. So it meant something to me. Become good friends with him, and through Wahoo. And me and my wife hung out with Greg, and he was, I'm going to think of what the girl worker was he was with at the time. Lord, I'll think about it in a minute. But yeah, he was with a girl worker, and her and my wife were friends. And I love Greg. He works a slow style, which I like too. A lot of chops, a lot of hammers, not a lot of rolling around, but that's what Greg was good at. And then again, he was somebody that liked me, and he made me look good. Till I knocked him out one night. I went to chopping him, and he leaned over, and I chopped him in the chin. He said he saw a flash of lights and didn't know where he was at for a minute, and I said, oh, I apologize. But yeah, but a lot of the old workers would tell you, you heard them just pulling your leg, and I didn't know if that was a rib or not.
Gotcha. Greg Valentine was a chip off the old block.
Yes.
From his daddy. They were almost like brothers, not father and
His
son.
daddy and Wahoo is the two that made me want to do this. And something I remember about Johnny Valentine, he could be in the ring, and you as a fan, and you felt like he was looking at you. In a crowd of people, you'd feel like he was singling you out. And much else I can say.
Okay. So, tell me about, as a promoter, as the pencil perhaps, and a wrestler, tell me about the stress of running weekly shows. Did it get very much on
A
you?
lot of stress in the young days, but as I got older, I try not to take it home with me. I do a lot of Facebook stuff, and I like to hear the guys' opinions. I could just throw names down together, but I like to do angles that guys that got heat. I like to put them together, and guys that, like some guys you just can't put together. I mean, it's something that I've learned through the years. And if I get two guys that's not getting along, I put them together on purpose sometimes, and they'll squash all that heat. It's just, and I have a lot of guys that other wrestlers will say, why do you use Ben? He's the shits. Or why do you use so-and-so? But I always felt like there's a place for everybody. You know, I mean, everybody can't be on top. Somebody's got to lose. Somebody's got to clean up when the show's over. You got to have you ain't got to have, but a commissioner and, you know, the managers. I love a good wrestling manager. Just lost a good one, Dice Riprock, and I don't know if I'll ever fill his shoes, because he's another one of my inventions, and he reminded me of a cross between. I remember talking about what name he was going to use, and he was going to use Jeff Blackwell. I said, no, get something that sounds snappy. And I love the Beverly Hillbillies. Do you remember the actor on there that was Dice Riprock? And he was Actor Ellie because she had money. Well, that's where I got the name from. And he said, should I dress up? I said, get you the loudest colored coat and pants that don't match. I said, I remember an old country comedian named Speck Rose, and his dress funny, and that's what made him, you know, famous. And so Dice started doing that, and I told him he could insult people. Well, he loved that part, and he could stir them up, and so I put a couple of big old guys with him so nobody couldn't get to him, so he could talk his trash, and he's sure gonna be missed.
All right, so tell me, so finish up on the stress part of things. I mean, I'm sure your wife was happy, and did it take you a while to become wise to start delegating authority in your promotion?
No, I kind of let them. You always got guys that want to work together, and you can fill that out and see, you know, who's good at promos, who you think can bring the people out. The biggest stress I ever have is 10 guys coming in the door with 10 different ideas. And you know, I love hearing ideas, but if you're giving me ideas on you, I don't. Because everybody looks out for themselves, and I understand that. But I see talent in guys, if you don't even know nothing about them. Bill Hazelwood, don't know if you know him or not.
Yep.
I picked him out of a crowd. He was a sharp dresser, a talker. I said, Bill, you want to be an announcer? He said, yes, I do. And then he started getting bookings where he made some money. I mean, I'm low budget. I work a job every day and get by the skin of my teeth, and got a house full of kids. And I just always been low budget. And one of my biggest things is just to keep it going.
We've all been at plenty of your shows. I've enjoyed being here as a fan. I've been enjoying being a video cameraman. It's been a little bit. Okay, so this stage of the game now. How do you view your legacy in the business? How would you like to be viewed? How would your legacy like to be viewed?
Well, I think I do. What I'd like to be viewed as that somebody that gave everybody a chance, didn't hold nobody back because of dislike. I mean, I've had a couple of guys because of my association with wrestling I don't get along with, but 9 out of 10 I get along with everybody. It can be stressful dealing with so many people, and everybody's got a better idea, and I try to give, since I'm not paying the guys financially a lot of money, I like to give them, be part of the group and not just be here to go wrestle, that's it. I want to hear their ideas, except, you know this guy's last name, Elliott? You heard of him?
Yeah, I heard
Okay. If you want to know anything about him, call Thomas Simpson. Adam told me to say that.
Okay, so let's finish with, we're kind of finished. This is going to be like the Easter egg of this interview.
Okay.
Give us your best George South story.
Sob story?
No, your best George South story. Your best one.
Well, right away, as soon as you mentioned that, I remember I've got a stack of scrapbooks. George said, I want to go through your scrapbooks. Can I borrow them? I said, yeah, I don't see why not. So I get them back, and I got 5 pages of George South pictures. I said, if he's going to put some with him or me, I'd understand. But they was all pictures of George, wasn't none of me. And he got a good kick out of that. And me and George, I told him 30, 40 years ago, I said, George, keep a record of all your matches. When you get older, take pictures. When you get older, you'll be so glad you did. And he said, Eagle, I'm glad you told me to keep a record. So he's kept a record. And something about me and George is odd, and I can't tell you the date, but we wrestled each other on the same date 30 years apart. On the same date. We worked for Charlie Babb on one, and on the other, and I don't remember who it was for. It seems like it was in Spindale, North Carolina or something, but that was the second one that we hit on the same date. And when we figured that out, I'll tell you another thing about George South. You ever heard of a promoter named Dean Willard? Well, he used to promote Lincolnton, Hickory, up around that way. He was a country boy. I mean, you can tell when you seen him. He was always dirty, and he would kind of let us do the show when we got there, because he didn't know much about it. But he said, Eagle, give you $100, come to Lincoln. I said, I got Brute Bernard on the show, Lou Thez, and I wrestled a guy called the Crusader, and George wrestled Lou Thez, and I think Brute Bernard teamed up with Jim Tucker, and they worked somebody. But he come to me at the end of the show, and he said, Eagle, I need you to follow me home after the show. I'm out of money. I said, okay. I followed him home. He gave me a pig. A baby pig, because he raised pigs for somebody else and paid him to do that. So he gave me one of their pigs. I brought it back to Forest City and sold it to some guy for $30. Just some guy we met at the convenience store. And George don't like me to remind him that that was his cousin. George introduced me to him, but yeah. We still laugh about it. George asked me, he was here last week, he said, tell me about the pig again. I said, you was there? He said, well, I got paid. I said, well, I got a pig. What do you do with a pig? I remember it pooped in my car. That's about all I remember. I had my brother-in-law with me, which he wasn't a wrestler, and he didn't know what to think about all this. So, you know, I tell you another story since I'm telling them. I know he's probably heard some of these, but me and that guy, Buck Forrester, he wrestled as Crusader. We went to Johnson City to wrestle for Charlie Babb on a Monday night. Well, across the road from the where we was having the wrestling, the community center or whatever it was a bank. So we parked in the bank yard. We get out of the van, we open the back door. Crusader puts his mask on. We pull our suitcases out. Probably 3 minutes later, here come 3 or 4 police cars. Boom, boom, boom. And they was coming to us. They said, get on the ground, put your hands behind your back. What's going on here? Y'all putting masks on out here and pulling out suitcases. We're going to have to investigate you. I said, no, we're wrestlers. We're going across the road. Oh, no, who can we talk to? I said, call Charlie Bass. So I remember it was in August and it was very hot. The pavement was burning, me and Buck both. And called Charlie Bass, and he said, I ain't never heard of him. Then he come across the road laughing. It wasn't funny to us because we was pissed off. Got dirty. I mean, we was all, and this was like before the show started. And it was hot. But that's a memory because when I mentioned wrestling the Crusader, I remembered that. And yeah, that was a experience.
Quick question, who's your all-time favorite stock car racer?
Not Earnhardt.
Richard Petty, right?
Bill Elliott. Well, David Pearson lives close to me.
Okay.
And the only conversation I ever had with him was me and him both had old police cars at the same time. And my wife had a restaurant, and he eat there every day. And so I'd always go down and park beside him and try to get him to race with him, and he'd keep laughing at me. But he liked her cooking, so he eat there a lot. Glad we sold that thing. That's too much work. But, yeah, and I got 2 sons that wrestle. Easy Money's my son, and he lives in Greenwood and don't wrestle no more, but Dusty Money still wrestles. He's 32, and he's one of the guys that growed up in the dressing room with the guys like Wahoo. Look this picture right here. Look the one behind.
Well, there he is right there. Ricky, I was at that show too.
Which one?
When against Ricky Morton?
Oh, yeah.
That was January of like 19, I think.
Well, y'all to like the wrestle roast. They come here and roast me. And when they asked me how come I didn't pay them, I said, well, I paid you what you was worth. Look the guy behind you pulling the knife on me. See him coming out of the crowd and me hitting the other guy with the crutch? Yeah. That was in Sumter, South Carolina. They throwed him out. They said, you want us to lock him up? I said, no, just lock him out. Because they had pictures of him before he pulled that knife biting his fingernails. Because somebody had took. But that see the little kid with glasses on? That's the referee's son that got between us. And I didn't know all that was happening. I seen the picture after the fact, and the police telling me he was coming after me with a knife.
On school heat.
And then I was wrestling in Lawrence, South Carolina for a guy named Paul Helms. And I was here and I was taunting the crowd, and this drunk come in the ring. He was so drunk. He'd try to hit me and I'd move and he'd fall down. I'd hip him up and he'd swing at me again. I'd move and he'd fall down. I kicked him a couple of times and then everybody hit the ring and put him out. But it was funny. We had one, Adam. We had one to come here after Adam come in the ring. And we had Adam Tyler and my son to tell them about the guy that come in the ring after y'all. Here. The drunk guy. Didn't have no shoes on.
Yeah, we were trying to get heat one night and he came in on me and Tyler. Dustin was in the ring.
Yeah, I told them Dustin was involved.
Dustin and Tyler thought that it was part of the show or whatever. The guy done took me down by the time they realized.
Yeah.
Dustin never realized until we came back. Then he came out of the crowd.
I was telling about me working for Cowboy and the drunk coming in trying to hit me, and I'd move and he'd fall down.
The thing I remember about you getting heat is the picture with the old man and the knife behind your back.
Yeah, that's just behind him right here. I don't know what all I got up there.
You good, Chief?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any more stories you want to tell that we don't make it cover?
I'd tell you a couple more, but that's about it. I mean, it's Lord, it's like when I go home, I'm thinking of 100.
Well, if you're thinking any that you want in the book, just type them up.
Okay. You got the one about my mom.